Hello, Eric. Hello. Oh,
Hello, can
sorry.
you hear us?
Yeah, and perfect. And here we are with both Eric and Liz, which are parents of students here at the Socratic Experience. Guys, thank you so much for doing this. How are you?
Good, thank
Excellent,
you.
thank you.
Awesome. I really enjoyed the background. Very summer, very relaxed, which is something that all of us enjoy in the beginning of the year. So maybe let's start with a little bit of introduction about yourselves. Tell us a little bit about you guys and about who do we have the pleasure to have at TSC as students.
Sure. So um, we work remotely and we've been in Spain for going on 6 years. Um, I think we're going to stay put for a while. We're in the Canary Islands and the time zone is good, pretty good for TSE. So
Yeah.
I I work as a lawyer and Eric does all sorts of creative things.
Awesome. And you guys have two students at the Socratic Experience, right? Both of your children. Can you tell us a little bit about themselves, about them?
Yes, they're quite different. Our daughter Shanti is more of a Rothko. Rothko is a ball of energy.
Yes,
Shanti seems very tame
Yes.
A
compared
little bit more
to his
calm.
energy.
Okay.
Yeah,
in many ways, Rothko is easier to describe.
yeah,
Shanti's a little bit more nuanced.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. Big personality,
Yeah.
has ideas all the time, wants to execute, make things happen. And
Yeah.
Shanti is more careful and reserved and like
Yes,
slow steps.
yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
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 That's a good description. It's so funny that that happens because I feel like a lot of times with siblings that's the case. You have one that's more just energetic and all out there, and then you have someone that's way more reserved, way more thoughtful, maybe thinking a little bit more instead of
Yeah.
just jumping to action and doing all of those things. And can I ask you how old each one of them is?
Shanti is 8 and Rothko is 11.
Yeah, perfect. And they're both students in DSE. They're both a part of our novice program. And for those of you that might not know, DSE does novice program, middle school and high school. And we're trying to make sure that we're interviewing parents that are satisfied with the overall experience at DSE. And so I guess my first question to ask you guys is just how did you found DSE?
I was at a conference in Texas, in Bastrop, Texas, and it was called Exit and Build. And a lot of it was about agricultural, like land, getting out of the cities and building physical things, but it was also about building different systems, all different systems, like reimagining why we're in these systems and how they're not working and why do we continue to in these systems when we could do something better. So it was a
Mhm.
really uplifting conference with a lot of amazing speakers. And Michael Strong, the founder of TSC, was not there, but he had been there the year before. So I got access to his talk, and it really inspired me what he said. He told his whole story of growing up and his education, and he didn't mention TSC specifically, but what he said really resonated with me. And then it wasn't until later that I saw that he had this program, the Socratic Experience. And the minute I saw it, I contacted him. We didn't even go to an open house or anything. We just went straight into a call. Then our son interviewed with the teacher, and then we were in like the next week. It just
So fast.
yeah,
It was like 7 days total turnaround
yeah,
from learning about it to onboarding and
Yeah.
plugging right into the community.
Yeah, it's so good because usually when you know that it's a good decision, you end up doing it very fast. It's so good. And can I ask you something like Rothko was, and you guys were talking about this with me before we started. Like you had a bunch of like different school experiences with your child. What was it about TSC that made you drop whatever Rothko is doing and just sign him up with us?
well, the school he was in before well, when he started TSC, he was being homeschooled because
Hmm.
he had been in a school that kind of sounded like TSC, and there was some key differences, but the parts that overlapped, the reason we went to this school that ended up being awful, was this whole idea of the child as an individual,
Hmm.
and supporting that child's talents. And they didn't have to sit at a desk all day. It was supposed to be project-based learning, and really taking those interests and developing them and kind of coaching and guiding to develop, you know, the child. And it had all different philosophies mixed in. So what we have found is that TSC is pretty much what we were looking for in that school that couldn't provide it. It was an in-person school and a little bit different approach to things, but very much what we were looking for. Like we already knew what we wanted. Maybe we couldn't put in words, but then when we got to TSC, we knew that it was right. And then it worked, which is the key difference between the school before and this one. We actually see learning and progress and excitement and all of those
Yeah.
things.
That's so good. So I know that because we're talking about this, Eric, you actually shared an office space with Rothko, and Lee was saying like that you guys can see an actual difference in Rothko. So can I ask you maybe with that combination, like what are some of the changes that you see in Rothko, and how was it to share a space with your kid while he's going to school?
So the sharing of the office was multifaceted. I wanted to ensure that Rothko had a really smooth onboarding. The school year had already started, and I just wanted it to be as frictionless as possible. So any technical issues could be resolved very quickly without having him to leave the room. And I, on a personal level, wanted to experience what the program is firsthand, not have it be repeated to me in some form. And that, from a personal perspective, really opened my eyes to a deeper understanding of what the actual implications of TSC, the pedagogy behind it, and how that affects and impacts students. And not just Rothko, but I saw and heard growth from all of the kids in the novice program last year. So the growth for Rothko personally was that he went from, again, because of our circumstance, really just at the beginning of learning how to read and then becoming more and more comfortable with reading. And there was a clear transition between learning to read and reading to learn. And I think that's a really empowered place to be, because it really transitions someone from being presented with material and struggling and then going through the learning process to get comfortable with it, to being able to then be independent and seek out information and leverage ideas that will, you know, are inspired by the student and so forth, in particular Rothko. So that was a tremendous development that I saw. And then how that compounds over the year is really something that I was really just impressed with. And to me, it's really a holistic approach to leveraging the awesome power of the individual student and allowing them to tap into a potential, which I believe is not something that is done in a traditional context. And that, I think, is a very important distinction between the Socratic experience and then other models.
Yeah, that's such a great answer. Thank you. And one of the things that I was telling you is that I feel like it's so important, and it's such a great example that you actually took the time to be there for Rothko if he needed something. Because I feel like a lot of parents sometimes in online school, and we try to fight that as much as possible here at TSC, they basically just leave their kids in front of the computer and come back a few hours after, and they don't have to worry, quote unquote. So the fact that you were available, the fact that you were there with them, it just shows so much about how much you care about their education. You mentioned that it's part of our program. We try to focus as much as possible on kids have developing their individual approach to life. Like we talk about self-mastery a lot, and you cannot develop self-mastery without knowing yourself and without pursuing your interests. Can I ask you, what are some of the things that you see that Rothko is interested in, and how maybe TSE helped them like either pursue that or identify those, if that happened, of course.
Well, he's interested in a lot of things. I want to say one thing that kind of taps into this question and your previous one. What
Mhm.
I only overheard snippets here and there because I always felt like I was, spying. But sometimes I'd overhear things. Every time I overheard anything, it really blew my mind. But for instance, the main guide, Dominic, would use different pieces of software for the school, whether it be for their reading logs, or they designed this really cool space to hang out digitally. Like the kids all designed different rooms. They're always trying new things. And Rothko loved that. And he's always giving feedback and always participating. And then they say, well, is this working? And then the kids would talk about what they liked about it, what they didn't like about it. And then they would collectively make a decision to try something new or not. And it was so like,
Fluid
it
and
was fluid and it
yeah.
wasn't bureaucratic. It just happened. They just continued moving it forward, testing and trying and building and starting over. And that's something that really connected deeply with Rothko, because that's how he is. He's like, let's just do it, you know? And
Mm.
then, well, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But we don't have to sit around and like take a long time analyzing whether we should do it or not. Let's just jump into it. And I love the spirit of that.
Yeah, and not only does it resonate with Rothko, but with me personally and with Liz, and so much so that when she just described that, I got goosebumps, because it is really how an organization thrives. It should never be a top-down process,
Mhm.
especially with education, because you miss so much of what could be, and that really is something that TSC leverages in her example specifically, and how that translates to the ongoing dialogue in class regarding everything. It seems to me that nothing is off the
Yeah.
table. Everything is
Mhm.
always up for discussion. If it
Mhm.
works, double down. If it doesn't, cut it. It's not of service to everybody in the community.
Yeah, it's so interesting that you say that, because one of the things that we talk about in our head of high school, Albert Lona, has this sentence that we all use, that a lot of times students, when they go through the traditional education and then they get to a program like TSC, where we're basically talking, where we're basically asking students, look, you have agency over the class, you're part of the class, tell us where you want to go and we'll try to follow it. And so a lot of times people, what we say is that students need to understand that they're not a member of an audience, they're part of the class.
Yeah.
And
Right.
most times in education, what happens is, well, students are members of an audience. Here we are. It's this very top-down
Yeah.
approach where you have a guide, he or she is talking, and you're there to listen. And it's great that your child is having the experience of going through novice program, and from an early age understand, no, 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 I have agency over whatever is happening. Because I feel like a
Mhm.
lot of the times what happens with students, and I've worked at TSC with people that graduated and went on to either form businesses or do all kinds of things. But I feel like a lot of times what happens is, there's a lot of students that leave school at an older age, and suddenly they realize, okay, I have agency over things, but I don't know what to do with that, because I've
Yeah.
been told all my life I just had to sit there and listen, and now I'm supposed to do something, but I don't know how to do anything because I've been a member of an audience
Yeah.
for all this time. And so that's definitely a great point. Thank you, Eric. You mentioned Dominic. Let me ask you something. How's your relationship with the guides? How would you describe the guides of working with your child, with your children in TSC?
Well, I'll just start by answering from my personal experience, having shared this space with Rothko for several months. I mean, just to be clear, eventually we separated and everything was fine, just
Of
because,
course.
you can imagine being a little chaotic and trying to do any kind of deep work becomes somewhat of a challenge.
Yeah.
But my point is that watching not only the student population thrive, to me, what was really the kind of icing on the cake was the interaction between the guides themselves, as well as the guides and the students. And the discourse that exists between the guides and then how that translates to the students, I was just overcome with excitement and optimism and joy because of the opportunity that exists for positive impact. And their effectiveness is what I was most impressed with. And again, it goes back to this whole idea of, leveraging the things that work and analyzing and understanding the things that don't work and getting to the reason why those things don't work, and then adjusting, not in 6 months, but in real time, in the moment.
Yeah.
And seeing that has, again, I'm just getting goosebumps just because, so much of this I wish I had as a child. And there's a little bit of jealousy there,
Or even as an adult.
or even as an adult to relive, all of the what could have been, kind of
Yeah.
scenarios. But just Dominic, I find to be an absolute gem, an authentic educator who is just deeply passionate about teaching and supporting all of these young minds, and then the support team of the guides that help execute the vision as well. Everybody is unified around a singular purpose, and I think that comes through in the language, the way that they interact with everybody and each other, and it's one based in mutual respect and infinite potentiality. I mean, it's really just an amazing thing to witness. And I was there for months, in the classroom, just, off camera, doing my thing. And it wasn't a constant stream, but every once in a while I would be paying attention and just constantly blown away, and inspired myself just to be better and do better. Like it was wonderful.
Yeah, definitely. And Dominic is our head of novice, and he's extremely inspiring to all the other guides as well, because we're like, well, the level of passion that Dominic carries
Yeah.
for novice, like we need that for all of our students, because he's
For everyone in the
extremely,
world.
yeah, exactly. He's extremely passionate about that. And so you guys actually had an experience, and this is why actually we started to connect. You actually had an experience where someone overheard a class, a little bit like Eric had been done on had been doing on his own living room, but you had an experience, someone overhearing one of the classes at an airport. And so I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about that story and what resulted out of it.
Sure. So Rothko and I went on a fishing trip in Canada, and we were flying back to Spain. We were in Montreal waiting for our flight. Rothko was connected with some of his friends from TSC. This is during the summer, everybody's doing their own thing, but they've really developed an incredible bond, and so much so that his friends that have moved on to the middle school where Rothko's still a novice, they're still connecting after school. I mean, just like yesterday,
First day of school.
first day of school yesterday,
Everyone
and
was so excited.
everybody was so excited, and they're connecting, finish school, and then they reconnect and using the same systems that they use in class to continue their relationships. And so it's quite dynamic. So there's a group of friends that play Minecraft and do all kinds of different things together. And so Rothko was connected on his iPad to a couple of people, and they were playing Minecraft. And as they normally do, there's always these conversations that happen, not necessarily relevant to the game or the thing they're doing, but they're just talking. So I had on the trip, there were these long car rides, and we were listening to an episode of the Joe Rogan Experience, and he had a guest on who was presenting evidence that would suggest that the moon landing was in fact not real. So it was a quite wild conversation, and Rothko was just really intrigued by all of the unanswered questions and the structure in which the guest was presenting the evidence. And so fast forward to the airport, Rothko's there having a conversation with his friends, and Rothko gets very excited about taking information, processing it, and then being able to offer his spin on it. But at that moment, he was simply presenting the evidence in a succinct way to his friends, suggesting that there could be a possibility that this, in fact, didn't happen the way people think it did. And so the way in which Rothko went about doing this was very focused on the facts, not adding color, not making it a personal anecdote about something that he had heard. He was doing a very good job to present the information as it was presented to him, but in a succinct way. So if you can imagine, we were kind of at a bar overlooking the walkway, and he was to the left of me, and I was just, you know, staring off into the distance. And this gentleman taps me on my shoulder to my right, and he's like, is that your son? I said, yes. And he said, in the next 10 years, I'm going to be seeing him on the cover of Forbes magazine, and or maybe I'll have invested in his billion-dollar company or something to that effect. And I, you know, obviously kind of blown away. It's, you know, not really something that I've have ever seen happen, certainly not to me in my life. And to have that happen in a place that is full of people, you know, everybody's going from one place to another. Seldom do you have time to kind of, you know, just be there and, you know, present in whatever space. And so it was a really powerful thing. Now, the conversation between myself and this gentleman continued, where there was a further knowledge of where that came from. So it wasn't just some random person being impressed with an 11-year-old's 5-minute conversation and saying, oh, wow, that's really great. But that he had experience in business and entrepreneurs in particular. He's well seasoned as an executive in multiple levels, and he's had a lifetime career in this space. So all of the things that he was saying to, I guess, qualify his statement was the thing that I kept going back to, because again, it's not just like some random person being impressed. It's been pre-qualified through his, you know, 50 years in business at a very high level. And so that conversation was short, like 20 minutes, and then he went off on his flight. And
but he also said, your son doesn't go to a traditional school, does he?
Right.
He knew right away.
He knew, right. I mean, that was after the brief, you know, hello, who are you, that kind of thing. It was the first thing that he had said, tell me about the education, because this is not from a traditional educational model. And then so I went right into TSC and talking about you know, the growth that I saw with Rothko over this past year, and then going into more detail about the ideas behind TSC and the fostering of this entrepreneurial spirit, which I believe, well, we need more of in general, but how that has impacted him, and the logic behind Rothko's structuring of his mini presentation is in large part due to the development of the past year, which was last year. So, I mean, this whole event that took place, we're talking about, was maybe a month ago, maximum. So this is all very fresh and current.
Yeah. And first of all, thank you for that answer. And I feel like it's great. And of course, we won't name anyone, but once again, we're talking about someone that already has a lot of investment, someone that has, as you were saying, like a background that proves that his claim of, okay, this kid is actually going places, is not just some random person that overheard a conversation on the
Right.
airport and saying like this kid is going places, but someone with experience of working with entrepreneurs and is able to notice those patterns, right? Um, Go
Absolutely,
ahead.
and I think that's really the main point to this, and why it's worth sharing is that after this gentleman and I got to know each other briefly, there was a basis of understanding that that elevated his comment to a place that I felt was based in experience, and so he's been a CEO for large multinational and various other positions at different companies along the way. And now he has a venture capital fund with a partner, and they're focused in a lot of education companies and various other things. And one of the roles that he has taken is to mentor the founders of these companies to guide them along this process. And so he's quasi semi-retired, though this is his kind of like uh, you know end chapter final
Yeah.
push over the next 10 years. He says he has this kind of energy left inside of him, and just to hear that from someone who has had all the experience that would
Mhm.
justify a comment, or to see potential in someone having had all of this time and experience with people at the top of their game, raising large sums of money, developing businesses, implementing them, and so forth, for really just arming the individuals for growth, and
Mhm.
kind of, looking to get the best out of every situation. So that
Yeah.
was very beautiful for him to say what he said.
And
And
he said he doesn't normally talk to
oh yeah, he
anyone at
doesn't talk to
airports.
anybody. He enjoys his glass of wine, and he focuses
Yeah.
on, getting from A to
He's not an extrovert at all.
exactly.
I've
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've met him
Yeah.
since, and
Yeah.
yeah, he was like, I never ever ever talk to anyone. He's like, I put my headphones on, and,
Yeah.
but he's like, I just had to say something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that to me was just so cosmic. Also, there's millions of people at the airport. Everybody's going to and from
Yeah.
wherever. Everybody's focused on themselves, not, so just there were a lot of things that brought us to that one place at the
Yeah.
same time. And so to not lose sight of that, I think, was an important thing for us, and to follow up with him to see how we could proceed in terms of opportunities that would exist
Mhm.
for Rothko, with possible mentorship and maybe even investment if the time is right in the future, which is one of
Yeah.
the first things that he said.
Yeah.
So since then, we have had a follow up with him about the possibility of, developing a relationship with Rothko, and I guess possibly even tapping into the TSC network
Hmm.
as well to support
Hmm.
other students through the mentorship program.
Yeah.
And, we'll see how
Yeah.
things progress.
Of course. And what I love about that story is there's a lot of things. One of them is it's so inspiring. Like for just the randomness of it. Like what are the
Yeah,
odds that something would happen? But also
wild.
it speaks about at least two amazing things. One of them is the fact that our program helps students develop the kind of critical thinking and argumentation that then you see on very successful entrepreneurs. And I'm happy that it resonated one, but also the fact that Rothko was like it, because regardless of our program, I feel like it's good to like give credit where it's due. And of course, there's credit at the SC because of all of that growth, but also credit to Rothko for because he was the one doing it. And I feel like that's amazing for him as well to have that validation of, oh, here I am playing Minecraft with my friends, and suddenly like someone's talking with my dad and he's saying like you're going to be this kind of a person, which I think that is just amazing. And it's good to know that like one of our main focus, and this is across like novice middle school and high school, is just helping students to think from themselves and looking at things from a critical perspective, and being able to craft an argument regardless of them ended up like being right or not. And what I mean by this is that sometimes we challenge kids to present arguments just for the sake of working on their own thinking, to present arguments they don't agree with, and that ability of them actually having to see all of the sides and then coming up with their own individual answer is something that we try to make sure that students have. And so that experience, I feel like it perfectly illustrates that. And I'm also so happy that you mentioned the calls that Rothko does with his friends, because that's one of our main focus, is to also help them build a community. Because a lot of parents and a lot of students actually, when they start learning in an online school, they're like, okay, so there's a social element that I might be missing, and maybe I'm going to lose my friends, and I'm going to fail at having these connections. So having all of these examples where students, even though they're going to an online school and classes, and they still want to connect, they still want to talk with each other, they still want to build those relationships. I think it's a beautiful thing. I have. Oh,
I
go ahead.
I was gonna just make one comment about that, and that is that um, the nature of any school that isn't determined by your zip code, at least in the United States, going through public school, is essentially, so it's like they're pre-qualifying through the population, and I think connecting with like-minded individuals fosters a natural organic flow of community, the development of community. Obviously, not everybody's going to get along like their brothers and sisters, and that's a good thing. You know, you don't want too much of a homogenous kind of thing for a variety of reasons. But I think at the core, everybody's showing up with the same understanding. And I think because of that, the people that end up there, to be clear, our experience is only with the novice program. You know, that's where Rothko and Shanti are. So, but my point is that everybody is coming to the table, and you're not so far off the spectrum of general lifestyle, values, way of being, that it's almost like an easier integration process for people to develop deep and meaningful relationships. And again, it's not going to be for everybody. You know, everybody's unique, and everybody's bringing their own perspective to the table when meeting people. When, you know, there's obviously two different scenarios. One is in class dynamic, and then the other one is more of a social one. And so, and you know, to the in-class dynamic, I've been so impressed with how respectful, how calm, how patient everybody is, allowing for space for people to finish their thought without jumping in. I mean, you know, there's a little bit of that, obviously, because they're still very much children. But it's so impressive to see the level of discourse that is happening. And I wish more adults could work in this frame. And there's a lot to be learned from this. And so I think that that is a kind of hidden gem to the Socratic experience, and working in this way. It really does require a greater degree of professionalism at a
Yeah.
younger age than you would expect. And to me, that's just been just wonderful, because that translates to every aspect of his life. And Shanti, she's considerably younger and she's getting into it as well. But I see also the same kind of progress, deep progress that's happening with her as it did with Rothko.
Yeah.
And that to me is really just
And just to be clear, the reason we're mainly talking about Rothko is because Shanti just
joined.
joined like
Yeah, of
6
course.
weeks before the end. Well, I
Yeah.
just swear all the parents watching, be
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh, they love their son.
Yeah, of course.
Well,
Sure.
right, 2 months before the school year ended last year,
Barely, yeah.
barely,
Yeah.
not even.
Because
So
she was
Yeah.
also catching up on her reading skills and she wanted to
Yeah.
be confident. But what she did, I'll just quickly
Mhm.
say, is I wasn't sure if TSC was going to be right for her.
right.
Mhm.
I knew, I had a feeling Rothko was really going to vibe with the program, but I wasn't really sure about Shanti because, as we said earlier, they're quite different
Mhm.
in their
Mhm.
approaches to learning and everything. But what happened was she would kind of lay on the floor. She was also eavesdropping for a long time.
For a long time.
She'd be in the office out of camera, like
Hi- hiding, doing her drawings,
yeah,
but actively
actively
listening.
listening. And one day, was it her idea? Or did we ask her, like, are you ready? Are you want
Oh,
to
Yeah.
do this? Are you
oh, I
ready?
think she said,
I think she finally was like,
she's
you
like,
know,
okay, I'm ready. Then one email, and then 3 days later, it was the Monday, I think, and she was like
Yeah.
right in. And
yeah,
part of it too, I mean, this is also quite unique in I'm assuming it's quite unique, but she already had the well, she was in the room, like Liz is
yeah.
saying.
So
So
she
she
knew
knew everybody.
The
They had
dynamics.
social
Yeah.
interactions, like
they
knew
everyone
her
knew.
Rothko
Yeah,
sister. And
Yeah.
then she even participated a little bit in when appropriate to do so
Yeah.
and stuff. And then it just flowed so naturally.
and she
In,
loves it.
Yeah.
oh, they couldn't be
Absolutely. Yeah.
happier. And they
Yeah.
just thinking about this, Friday is like a travesty in the week, because then there's no TSC on Saturday the next day, and it consistently has been kind of
They
like,
always get upset. Oh, it's
Yeah.
Friday.
Which is
which
which
I've
is
never heard anybody
Yeah,
say about
no,
any
Yeah,
no
school.
kids do
it's
that.
it's exactly the opposite that most kids do. Maybe in a year we'll repeat this interview, but just talk about Shanti after she goes
Yeah,
through the
right,
program.
exactly.
That's so inspiring. One of the reasons it's very selfish, but one of the reasons that I said, Michael, well, I want to interview them is just because I feel like as a guide listening to these stories, it's like it's a good reminder for us that yeah, we the efforts that we make in order to promote
Yes.
the class culture that allow for that to happen end up having like results, and they have good outcomes. And so
Absolutely.
thank you so much for that. I'll conclude this interview by once again being extremely grateful for you guys for doing this, for sharing that, for being extremely supportive not only of your children but also of TSC as a whole. And we're extremely appreciative of that. I'll ask you one last question before we go. Let's say that we have a parent that's on the fence of having TSC for their children or not. You've already mentioned a lot of things that we do that somehow are aligned with the kind of values that you have and the kind of the education that you want to give to your children. But let's say that these parents are on the fence. If you had to come up with just one thing that makes the whole difference at TSC, what would that be?
That's a great question,
Yeah.
and it's an important one to ask. And yeah, well, just have to give it a little thought, because
Of course.
I see it as capitalizing on an opportunity that we didn't even know we had. And then when we were presented with the opportunity, we chose to take it for a variety of reasons. And primarily because we saw that by taking it, we could maximize the way in which Rothko could absorb information and to leverage his own developing toolkit of
Mhm.
potential, whatever
Yeah.
that is, however it ends up, it really, I mean, that all of that is a complete unknown.
Yeah.
And I think to see an opportunity that would otherwise be something that would, I mean, it's really going against the grain, right? And that's something that I think parents in general have to be comfortable with,
Yeah.
or they're seeking that because they understand that the education system as a whole is
Mhm.
fundamentally broken. And so as parents, are we going to just continue repeating the same mistakes because that's what happened in the past? Or are we going to take action and enact change in a meaningful way, and not just take things as a kind of like ultimate decision that can't be course corrected if in fact it doesn't end up being the thing that people thought it was. It's
Mhm.
not nothing is forever. And
Mhm.
so for us, we could not be happier, but for other parents, it's worth trying,
Yeah.
because without that, you will never, ever, ever know.
And
Yeah.
I've seen this a lot through many conversations with many parents, especially with this failed school we went to. All these, they're parents like us, right? But all different and from different countries. And a lot of people moved to this island for this school. Like
Like we
people
did, yeah.
completely overturned their lives for this school. So you can imagine like the passion of the parents. And when it fell apart, like I mean,
Mm.
this is just not our experience. The
Yeah.
whole school left, the teachers left, all the families left, and it was like this period of grief and second
Mm.
guessing ourselves. And so we've been through this process individually. We left earlier than some other families. They
Mhm.
stayed longer and suffered more and beat themselves up more. And then a lot of those kids are now in more traditional schools because the parents were like, I made a mistake.
Yeah.
You have to stick with the status quo. We shouldn't have gone out on a limb. And it's sad to see because some of the kids are happy, like in a Montessori kind of situation. Well, they end up at a Montessori, but the ones that are more in like traditional
Mm.
educational, like British school, there's British schools here, things like that.
Yeah.
The kids are not happy,
No.
but the parents don't want to try again. They're like, so to me, that's that thing. If it's just a little bit of fear, or your family's telling you, like my
Yeah.
mom was really upset, she was a teacher and she's like, this is not right. You
Yeah.
have people, society telling you, other people telling you it's not right. I think it's part of it's that fear
Yeah.
of doing something differently, like stepping out and trying. And like Eric said, just try.
Just
Like
try.
you can always
You
change,
can always
especially
change your
you're
mind.
not moving halfway
Yeah.
across the world for TSC. That's the
Yeah.
beauty of TSC, is
Yeah.
that you can take it with you. And that's also a good point for us. I don't like to be stuck in one place. So if we want to go
Mhm.
somewhere,
We just pick up the
You can
laptop
go.
and
yeah,
go.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah,
that was,
Exactly.
the past school. I mean, we moved here for the school along with all of our friends that are here, both the
we didn't,
adults and
yeah.
kids. I mean, that was the one thing the school did really brilliantly, was bring together a bunch of like-minded people.
Yeah.
And
And we still have
uh,
that community.
yeah, the community is
We just don't
amazing.
have the school.
It's
We don't have the
great.
school, but it's really about just going for it and just trying and allowing for things to play out, and to not feel like, it's like all of this scheduling is just an arbitrary framework for uh, people to kind of move along. It has nothing to do with individual growth or the speed
Mhm.
at which people grow and the speed of which people learn. And, for example, Rothko's 11, Shanti's 8, and they're both in the novice program. There's collective learning, and then there's individualized learning to support
Which is really
their
great.
advancement.
How
Mhm.
fluid that is too, where if someone's struggling a little bit, they just open up a breakout room. Hey, Shanti and so come here. And then they have that
That's so cool.
individualized attention. It's amazing. It's
Yeah.
really amazing.
In addition to the guides doing the educating,
Yeah.
the students are teaching other students. When Rothko joined TSC, the kind of senior group in the novice program, they were helping not because they were asked to do so, but just because it's in the nature of the program. And
Mm.
yesterday, first day of this 24-25 academic year, Rothko, as kind of a senior in the novice
No, whisper.
program, was helping and provided uh, uh, tutorage
Help and
to
feedback. Yeah,
another
yeah.
student, and they went on to break, and he was just jumping and exciting. He's like, oh my god, I did the thing. He was freaking out. And just to see that
Because he
self,
explained it, he saw the person, the light bulb go on when he was explaining,
Yeah.
and he loved that feeling of being able to help them.
Yeah, of course. No,
Yeah.
no, that was such a beautiful answer. And once again, I want to be extremely appreciative of you taking the time to share all of that. And fortunately, you can use this to talk with to show more parents about TSC, because we truly believe that we're on a mission to help education to be better than what it is. I think that it's easy to look at a regular education and think, well, that's wrong, but what's the alternative? And we end up like just
Yeah.
committing with whatever we know. And fortunately, we're here trying to fight the status quo. Once again, thank you so much, Eric, Liz, for doing this. To everyone who's watching, you can go to the Socraticexperience.com and schedule your call. We would be happy to have your child as a student. And that being said, I'll see you all in a future video. Thank you so much.